Hey folks, David Stewart here. Let's take a look at a book cover. It is this one right here, Star Wars: The High Republic, Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, or Soule. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his last name. I've been seeing some people on Twitter, I guess the contrarians among us, trying to dunk on this book or this book cover. Now, I have no idea about the quality of the content that's inside, but the book cover is awesome, and I'd like to explain exactly why it's a very well-designed book cover. And there's three big areas that I'll go over, and you can apply this, of course, to your own cover design, or if you are selecting a cover, you should look for these things. So the first one is the overall composition of the image, and I'll explain exactly what's going on and why it has such a great impact. The second one is the color choice, which is extremely important. And the third one is the additional design elements and how they communicate exactly what this book is and what it represents. Now, obviously, it's a Star Wars book. Star Wars is the most popular franchise pretty much to ever exist, so it's going to carry a lot of these elements just with the name Star Wars. However, there's no reason why you can't kind of up the feeling of what you want the reader to expect when they're going to pick up this book by using these key design elements. So let's start with the overall composition of the image. The image has three basic parts. It has the figures, and it has a very kind of sparse, cloudy background with one background image. So I've talked about the main design elements of a cover are the text, the central image, and an auxiliary image. So the auxiliary image is the sky with this spaceship in the background. The central image are the figures, and then we have the text. So the composition of the main image is actually really good. Now, if you were to look at this right away, you might think that there's a problem with perspective, those of you who are trained artists, because if you were just looking at these people, all their heads would be the same height except for the Wookiee, who'd be a little taller because he's like 7 feet tall. This is what's called a worm's eye view. The horizon would actually be somewhere below the image, or at the ankles of the people that you're looking at. So this allows you to stack up characters in this sort of formation where the one who's closest also appears to be the tallest because they are the closest in perspective. It'd be like if you laid on the ground and looked up at the corner of a building. It's going to have this effect. Now, this is a really good choice as far as the perspective that you're going to use for this image, partly because you get this great design that really focuses the eye towards this central figure, who I assume is going to be the main character of the book, and especially her face. We have three heads lining up towards her face, and we have another head pointing towards it. A good overall composition is going to direct the eye where you want the eye to go, and it's towards this beautiful female face, and the look that she has kind of staring out into the horizon, staring forward with her hair blowing in the wind. It's a great image. That's what your eye focuses on. The other characters are mostly auxiliary to this main character, and of course she's holding a lightsaber. This should cue you into the obviousness that we're dealing with Jedi, right, in the Star Wars universe, besides the fact that it's actually called Light of the Jedi. If it had been titled something else, you would know that you were still dealing with Jedi because of all the lightsabers that you see. So the overall composition of the image is great. Our auxiliary part, which is going to be mostly the sky here with the spaceship, reinforces that you're in a science fiction area because you have a spaceship. And this spaceship obviously is not a plane from, 20th century America or something like that. It's very obviously a spaceship. It's something that it doesn't exist in our normal world. So all of that is going to tell you exactly what's going on and what you can expect with this. So that's the main thing, and it's a great choice here. The other thing about choosing the worm's eye view is that you're actually looking at the character from underneath, which makes them appear more serious and also tends to make them look a bit more heroic. You'll notice with like old Frank Frazetta paintings, a lot of the times the hero is the highest point in the image, and the rest of it is negative space. That's another thing about this too, is that the auxiliary part is pretty empty. It's mostly negative space, which is what you want. You don't want an image totally full of details because the eye will be directed nowhere. This image really directs the eye towards this face, and that worm's eye view gives the face a very heroic and stoic appearance, but it's still a beautiful and feminine face. Beautiful female faces, they sell books really well. It's a good idea if you were going to choose one or the other. If you have a male and a female character in a book, the female lead, if you're going to design the book cover, should probably take a little bit of precedence because female faces are just more eye-catching. People like to look at the female face a lot, both men and women. So I think it's a great composition as far as the painting goes that makes this up. It's a great painted cover as well. Another thing that you might notice is that the light source is off to your left-hand side, the right-hand side of all of the characters. This is also a good choice because it lets you really reinforce this word light. We have light really highlighting one side of the characters very strongly, almost going to just a pure white to see this reflected. But we don't want that kind of brightness right on the face because we would lose a sense of detail. We wouldn't be able to tell her frown. Having her face just slightly in shadow, having this guy's face just slightly in shadow, allows you to have a different level of detail and softness to the faces. The faces are able to look just a little bit more like a real portraiture rather than a field of bright white. So choosing to have the light off to one side is also a really good idea. So that's the composition element. Next, let's move on to the color choices, because the color choice that you make with your cover is very, very important. The big mistake that lots of artists make, whether they're cover artists or they're artists being hired to design a cover, is they put too many colors into it. When you are looking at a book cover or a cover maybe for like an album or something like that, you want to have a limited choice of palette because you are going to be seeing this thing in a thumbnail view on Amazon or somewhere else, or you're going to be seeing it on a bookshelf in a bookstore. A little bit of distance between you and the image. You want the colors to really stand out. That's the first thing you're going to notice is the colors. And so the color that they chose was yellow. This is a perfect color choice because it really catches the eye. It's nice and bright. It'll stand out on a bookshelf. And we have the name of the title, Light of the Jedi. So again, we're reinforcing what we are going to expect. The color yellow is usually associated with light and sunlight, even though you can't really look into the sun and see it as yellow. It's just brightness, but we tend to think of it as yellow. So we associate yellow with light. And so the choice of yellow for all of the characters are wearing what appears to be yellow-hued robes of some kind. That reinforces it. Of course, the woman's hair is blonde. That also helps it. So she has blonde hair and everything else is yellow as well. The yellow also creates a great contrast with anything that is going to be kind of further away. So this guy has a little bit darker skin. The yellow really highlights the darker skin well. It even highlights this green Twi'lek pretty well, and it looks pretty good on this Wookiee too. So the choice of yellow is great. It's going to stand out. Then, rather than choosing a complementary color, it's usually a mistake to go full complementary. So a color that would actually be exactly opposite yellow on the color wheel would be purple. Yellow and purple has an effect. It's very stark. I've used it before, but I usually don't recommend it. Instead, the contrasting color you want to choose for your main color is going to be one that is one place off on your color wheel. So directly across from yellow on your color wheel is purple. You want to choose one that's one off from purple. You want to choose blue, or you want to go the other direction and choose red. So yellow and red has a emotionally intense feel, I think. Yellow and blue has a cooler feel. So yellow and blue has a great contrast here. We have a blue sky. The sky is slightly tinted towards green, meaning it's pulling towards the yellow, making it not a super strong contrasting color. But it really does create a great contrast between all the yellow here, the yellow in the little title box here. All of it works just perfectly. And the only other colors we have are green and blue, the colors of the lightsabers. And because they're minimal, because they're kind of out of the way, they don't really count as being something that violates my idea of one main color and one kind of auxiliary color. You'll notice with a lot of my book covers, there's going to be one main color. If it's like a more mystical fantasy novel, it's going to be green. Something that's more science fiction, he's going to have a yellow and blue. In fact, I think I used yellow and blue for my second version of Prophet of the Godseed. It's a great color combination for science fiction because of that light and the kind of planetary blue. Just tends to look really good. So the color choice here is pretty much perfect. Now, there's some other things that they did as far as design that I think are also worth noting. So let's talk about the typography. Obviously, you have Star Wars, very classic. logo. So you want to put that up front and center. We want people to know that this is a Star Wars novel. In the negative space of the painting, that's where we want to put a lot of our typography. Now, I might have been inclined to actually get rid of the box and put Light of the Jedi up here so that we get a more negative space with the blue, but it looks great the way that this is too. And this use of a classic serif font to contrast with this very, very well-known Star Wars logo. And a little bit of design element here with this underlined the. This is something you can do. So words like the or of, you make those smaller. You can up their weight a little bit. You can make them bold. I don't think they did that in this case. They might have, but you can up their weight a little bit, and you could put a little detail like an underline. Really makes that, really shows off that word the and kind of removes it from the focus. So our focus is on High Republic. And these kind of almost Art Deco looking design elements around the text box just look fantastic. They re-emphasize something that is important here that I grasped right away when looking at this cover, which is the High Republic takes place sometime before the mainline cinema movies. So it's going to take place in the Republic before we have the Fall to the Empire, before the prequels, that is. And we also have this Art Deco theme kind of continuing along with these line details. And a great detail I liked is they have the lines go underneath this lightsaber, just kind of interact with the painting a little bit. Go around here and just disappear over here with this leg and pop out above the Twi'lek. So those little very small attention to detail things, they can make a good difference here as well. So that's some of our design elements. Now, if we look at the title font, what we have here is, I don't know exactly what font this is, but it's a very, very slight serif on the font. So if I zoom in here very tight, you can see, even though this is kind of pixelated, that there's some very slight serifs on the top of the font. So if you know exactly what font this is, you can let me know. I've seen a couple of these that are basically like this. And then Charles Soule is in the same font. This is perceived as like a sans serif font, which communicates things like modernity. Of course, Art Deco kind of communicates something both past and modern, that 1920s vibe. But it also just has an elegance to it. So it looks a bit like a sans serif, but it's not. It has very, very light serifs. Another thing that I like about this font is just this narrowing on the G that gives a little bit of an elegance. That not everything is this same weight all the way through. We have some just a little bit of variations within some of the curves of the D and the G. It's a really good font choice. It looks very, very elegant. And notice that we're not using the same serif font. This could be Trajan, right? I've recommended Trajan. It's a very classic font. So it's something like that. So in fact, I don't think it's Trajan because the P is connected, but it doesn't matter. So they have a classic serif font here. Here's where they have something that's a little more modern, a little more smooth, a little more on the sans serif side. And that's really all you need. You don't need to use a whole bunch of different fonts for this design, but it does communicate science fiction and also some fantasy elements too, something fantastical, something epic. I think it's a great cover, and I wanted to break down all the elements that went into constructing this cover. So if you were to paint a cover, you could use something like the worm's eye view to create this heroic appearance and also create this echelon of figures really pointing towards this central image is the face. It just directs the eye perfectly towards her face. That's what you want. And you don't want to get overboard with details and fill in this negative space. You want that open sky above. You want to have the background kind of be unimportant because you want the eye to be directed towards the details that matter. So thanks so much for watching this little breakdown of this cover, this analysis. Hopefully this will be useful for you if you are selecting covers or you are designing them yourself to produce something of good quality. It comes down to the composition, the colors, and the typography choices, the all overall design choices that are added to this painting. So overall, great job. And I don't know what kind of content's going to be in there. I probably won't read it because I'm not really into the Disney stuff, but you never know. If somebody says it's really cool, then maybe I'll check it out. If I were to see this book and completely absent the context of what I've had with, Disney Star Wars stuff, this would make me want to read the book. It definitely looks like a book that's an interesting take on the Jedi thing to me. So let me know what you think down below in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget my newest book, The Keys to Prolific Creativity, comes out on March 27th. You can pre-order it for $2.99. It is linked down below in the description box for the Amazon pre-order, and the physical will be releasing around the same time, so make sure you are on my mailing list, dvspress.com/list, if you want to buy the physical version of that. So I'll see you guys next time.